Listen to them, children of the night. What music they make. Hello everyone, it's the season of Halloween, and today I wanted to share my top 10 favorite vampire films. Now, in the early years of the channel, I shared all my favorite vampire films, about over 30 films in a long video awaiting Underworld Blood Wars. You can check that out on the channel. This was a very hard list. If you may not know, outside of pizza, Batman, and Star Wars, I love vampires and vampire history, mythology, just everything vampires. I'm a huge fan of vampires. I love the undead in a way. There's something very dark, yet something kind of very romantic about being immortal, and having the dark gift, so to speak. And I just like different incarnations of vampires across media. Not you, Twilight. Not you. This was a very difficult list to compile, so it's not going to be regarded as the best vampire films, but just my top 10 favorite 10 vampire films I highly enjoy. Before I continue, feel free to share your favorite vampire films down in the comments below. Starting off with honorable mentions are the Underworld sequels. I can't choose just one. Queen of the Damned, the sequel to Interview the Vampire, but loosely adapted from the novel by Anne Rice. Who could forget Down with the Sickness by Disturbed? Another film is Daybreakers with Ethan Hawke and Sam Neill. Blade 2, Nosferatu from the early 20s, Dracula's Daughter, a very underrated sequel to the Bela Lugosi film. Fright Night Part 2, From Dusk Till Dawn, and who could forget that snake dance with Selma Hayek? Near Dark, directed by Catherine Bigelow. John Carpenter's Vampires. And then who could forget Once Bitten? I'm not a vampire. I'm not. And number 10 is Shadow of the Vampire. This is a 2000 film that's a very cool blend of fiction and reality. It basically is about the making of the original Nosferatu film, and it implies that Max Schreck was really a vampire pretending to be an actor. So we get William Dafoe in grotesque makeup. John Malkovich is the director. Cary Elwes, yes, is in this. He's also in Bram Stoker's Dracula. But this is such a cool film where it blends history and fiction together and just says, what if they actually captured a real vampire on film? After that, at number 9 is We Are the Night. This is an underrated German film. I love this. I saw it on Netflix, and if you can see it, there's a dubbed version. Pick up the Blu-ray that doesn't have the dubbing. If it's just the subtitles, it's so much better. It is such an emotional film. In many ways, it's kind of like Lost Boys, but with women. It's like the Lost Girls. And we have this character here who gets turned and is joined by these women, and it's just her experience being a vampire, but then end up having to go against them at the end, fall in love with this man who's a detective after the string of murders. And we also get to see a sympathetic side to the vampires. Such a cool modern vampire film. After that, at number 8 is 30 Days a Night. Yes, this is directed by David Slade before he did Twilight Saga Eclipse. And I love 30 Days a Night. This was originally a graphic novel, and this is an adaptation. It brings back vampires to being cold-blooded monsters. Stars Josh Hartnett, and it's about this Alaskan town. It's during the winter where there's no sunlight. These group of vampires terrorize this town, and the human residents have to basically have a standoff for 30 days of night and survive. And it is scary, it is brutal, it's just unsettling, and it brings vampires back to what they're supposed to be. Blood-sucking monsters, and it's bloody marvelous. After that, at number 7 is Underworld. Underworld is a cool film where you mix vampires and lichens, but what makes this is the cinematography and the gothic romance between Kate Beckinsale's character Celine and Scott Speedman's Michael, and how the war between lichens and vampires started, the allegiances, the betrayals, and also, who could forget the new metal soundtrack and the Matrix-like action? Oh man, this really was a vibe with Matrix, Blade, and Underworld. That really was a vibe. Black leather guns and kung fu wire work. Bill Nye's performance as Victor, Michael Sheen as Lucian. This is such a cool film, and it's the best of what you want when werewolves and vampires cross paths. After that, at number 6 is the original Bela Lugosi Dracula from 1931. This is still one of the best. It's simple, but so good. And Bela Lugosi, he not only gives one of the greatest performances ever on film, but he creates the stereotypical vampire. Count Chocula, Dracula, everything that followed in cinema was because of Bela Lugosi and this original Dracula. And without music, it's even more terrifying. It's just the dialogue, the atmosphere is spooky. Renfield in this. And it does deal with like crucifixes, reflection, shape shifting. It was supposed to be a bigger budget movie, and because of the Great Depression, they had to basically lower the budget and have it more like the stage play. From the use of Swan Lake Suite to the use of special effects, the look of Dracula, the black and white, all the way to the showdown at the end. Such a classic film, and who could forget Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing? This is the vampire film that started it all, and it's among one of my favorites. After that, number 5 is Blade. Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. This is not only a wonderfully brutal vampire film, but it also is the first film that should be thanked for grounding Marvel superheroes into the 21st century. Without this film, we would never have had the MCU. We wouldn't have Spider-Man, X-Men. You know, we had the first superhero wave with Batman 89. Superman 78 came out, but then there wasn't that much in between. Batman started the modern superhero blockbuster, and that started to fade out until Blade. And it's refreshing to see an R-rated Marvel movie before everything was so Disney-fied and filled with jokes. Blade is a brutal film with a great story. Seeing Wesley Snipes in a role he was born to play. Stephen Dorff is awesome as the villain. Deacon Frost. Who could forget Chris Christopherson? Such a badass movie. And I love seeing vampires that are monsters and somebody who's a daywalker that walks between the underworld and our world fighting against the dead, you know? And that's kind of cool. Seeing how, what if vampires existed? Here's what they would be like. You know, True Blood did it, and they're a public, but I just felt like they weren't everywhere. Where Blade, they're in secret, but they're everywhere, and you don't know it, and that is scary. It's not only one of my favorite Marvel movies, but one of my favorite vampire movies. At number 4 is Interview with the Vampire, the original 1994 film. This is the first film I saw that got me into vampires. I remember a little bit as a kid, but I saw it on TNT, and I was just immediately in love with the world, with immortals, the vampire mythology, the dark gift, and this is what started my love for vampires on film. This movie is the reason why I'm a fan of vampires. And I didn't know they were based on a series of books. Imagine my surprise when I'm like, oh my God, there's a book series, not one, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Anybody go out there. The AMC show does not do it justice. Go out and read The Vampire Chronicles and New Vampire Chronicles. They're amazing, and this film is just probably one of the best adaptations. She had a hand in doing the screenplay. They make some changes, but they work for the better. Brad Pitt is amazing as Louis. Tom Cruise is awesome as Lestat. He should play a villain more often. Kirsten Dunst. It's crazy seeing the tragedy of Claudia, but yeah, she's creepy in this, and it's tragic, and she conveys so much maturity for being at such a young age. And then Antonio Banderas as Armand is such a great film, and it's just like how it starts off with Christian Slater as the interview, this man talking about his life, the tragedies, what it means to be mortal, what it means to be human, what it means to be immortal, what it means to be a vampire. There's so much going on in this film, and it's just a ride from start to finish, going through all the different time periods all the way to the end. And it's a shame we never had a sequel, because I would have loved to see what Vampire Lestat would have been like with Tom Cruise. This film left me wanting some more. After that, at number 3 is Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a bloody good time, a dark gothic romance. What I love about Francis Ford Coppola is he brings like an early film style to this. It was made in the 90s, but it looks like a film made in the early 20th century. And what I really enjoy about this is that it combines the history of Vlad Tepes and puts it into the novel of Bram Stoker and merges them. And it creates a very sympathetic, romantic character of Dracula. It's a tragic character. It's really about love and immortality and loss. And there's so much in this film. I love seeing Vlad the Impaler, you know, fight off the Ottoman Empire at the beginning. The score, that dun 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 dun. Winona Ryder in this as Elisabetta and Mina Harker. Anthony Hopkins is awesome as Abraham Van Helsing, but we also have Keanu Reeves. I know where to bury the bastard, at Carfax Abbey. There's some funny humor here. The practical effects are phenomenal. How they mix film and lens and projectors and use models. Like everything, every trick in the book is used in this movie. And it's just one of the best Dracula adaptations and the perfect film to not only watch for Halloween, but even like Valentine's Day and just year round. And number 2 is Fright Night, the original from 1985. Welcome to Fright Night. For real. Yeah. This film is awesome. I remember seeing it in middle school as a teenager on HBO, and I loved it. You know, there's something so cool about seeing somebody see a vampire move in next door and nobody believes him. They all think he's crazy, and he has to not only face off against that vampire in one night, but he has to prove to everyone that, hey, I'm not crazy. This guy's a vampire and he lives next door to me and he's killing people. Like, there's just something great about that plot. Plus, even though you had dark films in the 80s that had this wholesome sensibility to them that just made them fun. Horror movies back then knew how to have fun. And it was great seeing Chris Sarandon in this role as Jerry Dandridge. And, you know, back then I was like, well, Prince Humperdinck from Princess Bride is a vampire? But then you also get Roddy McDowall as the great Peter Vincent. He's an amalgamation of Vincent Price and Peter Cushing, who is also in Dracula films. His friend Evil Ed gets turned, how he has to save his girlfriend and survive this night. And the soundtrack, who could forget Autograph? Who could forget the nightclub scene? Oh man, there's just so much in this film, and it was written and directed by Tom Holland, who also wrote and directed the original Child's Play, wrote Psycho 2. Oh man, this movie is just an awesome, underrated vampire film. And it joins another film in the 1980s that I think is regarded as probably one of the best vampire flicks. My favorite at number one is The Lost Boys. Sleep all day, party all night. It's fun to be a vampire. I love The Lost Boys. I remember seeing this on Sci-Fi Channel in the late 90s. I was in third grade, actually, and I saw it after Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. They had a double feature around Halloween, and I loved it. That's back when they had limited commercials. They didn't cut out too much, so it was like in widescreen, like in the old DVD. I love The Lost Boys. A wonderful film from Joel Schumacher. And yeah, like the freaking sweaty saxophone guy, I still believe, you know, this movie, every time I feel bad about vampire films, I still believe there's good vampire films. And The Lost Boys is one of them. It's cool seeing Jason Patric and Corey Haim, with their mother played by Diane Wiest, go to Santa Carla, California, moved with their grandfather, her father, and, you know, meet some new people. Those people just happen to be vampires. Jamie Gertz's very young role here. And who could forget Kiefer Sutherland as the bad guy David? Yeah, Lost in the Shadows by Lou Gramm, Cry Little Sister. This soundtrack is just phenomenal. But I like how Joel Schumacher had teens who are almost to adulthood and then younger kids with Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Jameson Newlander with the Frog Brothers, and how they had two stories going on at the same time. And then it gets bloody. You know, vampires fly in this. They're cool. There's missing people. There's a mystery. The mom's dating someone. Edward Herrmann plays Max. That was a phenomenal twist. Probably one of the best twists in cinema. Never invite a vampire into your home, silly boy. It renders you powerless. Did you know that? Yeah, everyone knows that. That bloodbath showdown in the third act is just awesome. And what makes it is the very ending where the grandpa's there. And he's just like, you know, there's one thing I never could stomach about Santa Carla. All the damn vampires. And he knew what was going on the entire time. This film had two straight-to-video spin-offs, or should I say sequels, but they're more spin-offs in my eyes. Lost Boys of Thirst actually is pretty decent, but this is a perfect standalone. And if you want to read a proper sequel, read the graphic novel comic series. I love The Lost Boys. It's the one that I always watch, even when it's not Halloween, and it's a feel-good vampire film that feels hip, modern, and just something about the 80s. I don't know, there's something about this movie that's just timeless in a way. That does it for my top 10 favorite vampire films. Let me know your favorite vampire films down in the comments below. What will you be watching this Halloween? Let me know. In the meantime, you can check out these other videos for more content. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Have a happy Halloween.